Okay, let's see, where were we? Oh yeah, Darius the First was pissed off at Greece. So we're going back to 492 BC, where Darius had made preparations to deal with Athens and Eretria for helping their fellow Greeks during the Ionian Revolt. He gathered a force of roughly 600 ships and an estimated 20 to 30,000 troops, though accounts of the time claim that it was closer to 200,000 troops. And in charge of this invasion was Mardonius, who started by fully subjugating the Greek city-states of Thrace and Macedon. However, he was wounded during an unsuccessful attack by a local tribe, and much of the fleet was damaged or destroyed in a storm, so the force returned to Persia. After this first phase, Darius then took the opportunity to be a bit more diplomatic and sent emissaries to most of the Greek city-states demanding tributes of earth and water, which was basically a showing of subjugation. Most of them agreed, however Sparta threw the emissary down a well and Athens executed the one sent to them. This did not make Darius very happy, but also created an alliance between Sparta and Athens, who weren't typically on the same page. So here we go, Persia coming in to take on an alliance of the two strongest powers in Greece. Except about that time, there were some issues with Spartan leadership. See, like the fact that according to some reports, slaves in Sparta outnumbered citizens 7 to 1. A little known fact about Sparta was that they had two kings, and when the two held opposing beliefs on how to handle Persia and the city-states that bowed to them, one of the kings, Cleomenes, bribed the oracles at Delphi to get rid of the other king. However, news of the bribery came out and Cleomenes was exiled, then allowed to return, and then eventually imprisoned and found dead the next day. He would be replaced with his half-brother, some guy named Leonidas. So because all of this was going on, Sparta was out, and by 490, Persia was ready for round 2. They started this time by attacking Knossos, who was part of the Greek help sent to Ionia. Persia took Knossos, destroyed the city, and enslaved all the people that they could capture. They then did a little island hopping, subjugating any who wouldn't accept their rule, then headed to Eretria. At this point, Eretria was faced with 3 options. Option A, run and hide. Option B, prepare for and hopefully outlast a siege. Or option C, agree to subjugation under Persian rule. They chose option B, and the Persians laid siege to the city for 6 days. But on the 7th day, those people that felt they should have just bent the knee to Persia opened the gates and allowed the Persians inside the city, which was then burned to the ground and the people all enslaved. Seeing Eretria as punished for their previous actions, the Persians then set their sights on Athens, and they sailed on to also punish them. They landed in the Bay of Marathon, and what followed was the Battle of Marathon, which we've done an entire video on by itself. But long story short, the Athenians, with the help from the Plataeans, defeated the Persians at Marathon, then hurried the 25 miles back to Athens in order to defend the city from the rest of the Persian invasion force. Seeing this, the Persians sailed back home and thus ended the first Persian invasion of Greece in 490 BC. Darius wasn't done though, and immediately began planning a second invasion, but there was a major uprising in Egypt that had to be handled, and Darius died not in the Egyptian uprising, in another way. So his son Xerxes took over, and Xerxes hated the Greeks as much as his father did, so he wanted to also completely wipe them out. And after 10 years of preparation, in 480 BC, Xerxes himself led an army of an estimated 100,000 Persians in the second Persian invasion of Greece, which began at the Battle of Thermopylae. Many of you have probably heard of it, where the Persians met a combined force from Sparta, Thebes, and Thespia of about 7,000 troops, led by that Leonidas guy from earlier. The coalition of Greeks held off the Persians for 7 days at the narrow choke point before being outflanked and annihilated. At the same time as Thermopylae, a Greek alliance navy was trying to hold off the Persian fleet at the Straits of Artemisium. However, both sides took quite a few losses. A good number of Persian ships were lost in storms, and when word of the loss at Thermopylae reached the Greeks, they withdrew their naval force to Salamis. These victories victories opened up Greece to Persia, and they swept through Euboea, Phocis, Boeotia, and Attica, attacking and destroying the cities of Thespia and Plataea, then doing the same to Athens, which had been evacuated and abandoned by that point. And also at that point, Persia was pretty much in control of all of Greece except for Peloponnesia, which was home to Corinth, Argos, Megalopolis, and Sparta, and which was connected to the mainland by the Isthmus of Corinth. And the Isthmus was protected by a rather large allied Greek army to keep the Persians out. So in order to complete his subjugation of Greece, Xerxes had to take Peloponnesia, but that land journey would be damn near impossible. So the Persians would have to invade from the sea, but remember that the Greeks had amassed their navy at Salamis, and Persia would have to get through them in order to get to Peloponnesia. That fight took place at the Battle of Salamis, where the Greek navy was able to defeat the Persians. This led to a stalemate where the Persians didn't see a point in attacking the defensive positions of the Greeks along the Isthmus of Corinth, but the Greeks were unwilling to leave their defensive positions. Worried that he might be trapped in Europe due to not having the naval power that he wanted, Xerxes headed back to Persia with a good chunk of the invasion force, leaving Mardonius in charge, again. After the two sides wintered into 479 and Athens kept prodding at Sparta to do more, the largest Greek hoplite army ever assembled, with an estimated strength of 80,000 troops, began to march towards the Persians. Wanting to end this whole thing once and for all, the two sides jockeyed for better battle conditions, and the two sides finally met at the Battle of Plataea, with the Persians fielding an army of about 100,000 troops. The battle ended with a huge victory for the Greeks, the death of Mardonius, and a full Persian retreat. Hearing of this victory, the Greek fleet chose to set sail and attack what remained of the Persian fleet at the Battle of Mycale, destroying much of it and bringing it into the second Persian invasion of Greece in 479 BC. But the Greeks weren't done. The cities Persia had taken mostly revolted, and the allied army went on the offensive at that point for the rest of the 470s BC, taking multiple cities including Byzantium, and during this time Sparta's leadership was challenged and the Athenians took over as the leaders of the coalition, with Sparta more or less bowing out as they saw the war being over, since they had freed the Greek territory that Persia had taken. In the late 460s, the Allies sent a large force to aid the Egyptians in their revolt against Persia, which did not go that well for the Allies, who at that point were known as the Delian League, and it was only a shock double victory on land and sea in 451 that allowed them to retreat back to Greece. With both sides tired of war, they reached a peace agreement, and the Greco-Persian Wars came to an end. And yes, during the War of the Delian League, there was also the First Peloponnesian War, but we'll get to those wars between Sparta and Athens another time. So yeah, Persia set forth with the original intention of destroying Eretria and Athens, and they accomplished that. And Greece set out to free themselves of Persian rule, which they also accomplished. So basically, outside of a ridiculous number of people being killed and resources wasted, this was pretty much a win-win.